The President, please be seated. The court is now back in session. Now we would like to hand over to counsels for Mr. Noon Chia to proceed with the questions they would wish to put to the witness. You may now proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Sauserun, good afternoon. I am Jasper Pauw. I am the international counsel for Mr. Nuon Chia, and I have a number of questions for you this afternoon. And I would like to talk to you first about the 1970 to 1975 period, just like the OCP and the civil parties have done. And you have told us, Mr. Sauserun, last week that at the time American bombardments took place. And I would like to ask you some additional questions on that topic. And my first question is, did you personally witness American bombings on Mondulkiri province?
Response: yes, I did. The houses in the province were destroyed.
And Mr. Sauserun, can you give an estimate as to for how many years these bombardments continued?
Response: the bombardments took place from 1970 to 1975. The bombers included B-52.
You've stated that the Americans bombed houses. You also last week spoke about the bombing of pagodas. Do you remember speaking about pagodas last week?
Response: yes, I do. The pagoda in Chimian village was destroyed, and also other pagodas in the province were ruined.
Did the Americans also bomb rice fields or rice paddies?
Response: yes, in some parts near the border, the plantations were hit, and my family member, 11 of them were injured by the bombs.
Did people die because of the American bombings in Mondulkiri?
Response: yes. In some villages, only very few people left. Those who were not hit by the bombs, very few. The other were hit.
And just so I understand correctly, the people that were hit by the American bombs, were they killed by the American bombs?
But
Response: Yes, some died and some were injured.
Do you know what happened with the bodies of the people that died because of the American bombardments?
but នឹងខ្ញុំក៏បានសួរអ្នកដែល
Response: I talked to those who survived the bombings, and they said the people who dead because of the bombings were buried.
And do you know what happened to the people that were wounded by the American bombings?
but អត់យល់ទេ
Response: I don't know, and I think when the attacks were taken place, a lot of people were evacuated. They were taken away with the troops that attacked Cambodia at that time. They were moved to the Vietnam soil.
Do I understand your answer correctly, Mr. Sausaroon, that a lot of people were evacuated to escape the bombings, or is that an incorrect summary of your answer?
but
Response: No, these people were not evacuated. They had to flee the province. They flee for their lives, and they had to run to the countryside to avoid being bombed on.
In your testimony last week, you used the term carpet bombing. Can you explain what you mean with the word carpet bombing?
but
Response: It is true that the bombs were dropped all across the location, because on one occasion there would be 3 bombers dropping bombs days and night.
You've spoken about the B-52s. Those are airplanes. Did you ever see American helicopters or gunships in Mondulkiri?
but មាន
Response: Yes, I did see the helicopters, the very fast helicopters that also dropped bombs on to destroy villages and bridges.
And you've seen American airplanes and you've seen American helicopters. Have you also seen American soldiers in Mondulkiri province?
but
Response: I saw the airplanes, and the American soldiers entered to the village of Krang Teh, and since the location is adjacent to Kratis province, and these troops approached their vicinity.
Mr. Sausarun, do you know why the Americans were bombing Mondulkiri?
The President, witness, please hold on and await the objection by the co-prosecutor. Mr. Co-prosecutor, you may now proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. We'd object to the question as calling for speculation from the witness unless counsel can establish some foundation as to why this witness would have personal knowledge of the motives or actions of the U.S. government.
Mr. President, I'm happy to rephrase the question. Mr. Sausarun, at the time, in the 1970 to 1975 period, did people talk about what they thought was the reason for the American bombardments?
Response. I do not understand the question quite well. Please repeat it.
Mr. Sausarun, I understand you don't understand the question well, so with permission of the President, I will try to make it a bit clearer for you by showing a document to you. It is document D222/1.19. It is a DC Chem publication, and it speaks about Mondulkiri in the 1970s, and it contains a statement by a person from Mondulkiri who was there at the time. So if I have permission from the President to show this document on the screen, the title of the document, to be complete, is Khmer Rouge Purges in the Mondulkiri Highlands. And the excerpt I want to show is ERN 003-97610.
The President, first of all, please indicate whether the document has already been put before the chamber and when, and in which particular list of the proposed documents to be put before the chamber would you wish to refer to?
Mr. President, as you know, our position is that we should be able to use any document to impeach a witness, and especially a document such as this DC Chem publication.
The President interrupts. You are supposed to follow the instruction concerning how to impeach the witness, and you are now instructed to read the instruction of the TC dated on the 24th of May 2012. The documents that are not yet classified as E3 and documents that have not yet been put before the chamber shall not be raised, and that only after Rule 87.4 of the internal rules is fulfilled, that document is allowed to be put before the chamber for the examination before the witness. So the chamber would like to refer you to this instruction on the 24th of May 2012. Unless the condition is met, you will not be allowed to talk about this.
Mr. President, for the record, I think that would be a violation of my client's right to effectively question his witness, but this document is mentioned on the prosecution's submission and can be found in document number E109/4.19, and it's at number 176. But again, we think this is redundant information, and what is relevant is the actual document that we're talking about.
The President, Mr. Co-Prosecutor, you may now proceed.
Yes, Mr. President, I can confirm that this is a document that we had included in our annexes, so we would not object on that basis. Our only objection would be, or our limitation would be, that the question be something that relates directly to the witness's knowledge, and that it not be used for him to speculate on something that is outside his knowledge.
The President, indeed the Chamber wishes to know that if the document is not yet classified as under E3, a party needs to establish the basis for the document, whether it is the requirement is met. It doesn't matter it is in the annex or not. The Chamber would like to make sure that the parties give ground for the submission of for putting the document now before they can proceed to impeach or to put questions to the witness relating to that document. You may proceed.
Mr. President, thank you, but I'm confused as to with what I should proceed. Should I provide reasons for relying on a document that has been submitted by the OCP and that the OCP does not object to? Should I file a request to have this admitted as new evidence, even though this document comes from the prosecution? Or shall I proceed with my questioning? Some guidance would be appreciated.
The President, indeed you are allowed to proceed to put questions to the witness because the co-prosecutor has already indicated that the document falls within the annex that already submitted before the chamber, and that you are asked to put questions relating to only the part that this witness personally has the knowledge of.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will then proceed, and with your permission, if the document can be shown on the screen, document with ERN 00397610. Is that indeed? And I will read the relevant excerpt for the witness because the witness cannot read it himself. And I quote, and again, this is a statement by a certain Prai, who was a Phnom inhabitant of the Mondulkiri province at the time. I quote his statement: "The bombing first started in the late 1960s. The Americans came to take action in Cambodia to fight the Vietnamese and the Viet Cong, not the people of Cambodia. This was because there were people from Cambodia and from Vietnam who had contacted the Americans. Lon Nol made that request in order to oppose Sihanouk. Then the bombs were dropped every day. The sky became dark with the helicopters. There were many helicopter gunships and B-52s dropping bombs. When the helicopters fired, I was at Opol in Dak Dam sub-district. The firing also hit Tuol Sve, Pului, Punron, Lamik and Lumpak. And these areas now have huge craters. And a bit further down on the same page, his statement continues, and I will read. One time my children and my wife were running away from a helicopter approaching and firing. They had been grinding rice. I knew it was American soldiers because they came to my village. The helicopters landed on the mountains, in the fields, everywhere. I did not understand the American language. I looked at the faces of the Americans and the Lon Nol soldiers. I was already afraid. At that time, the Viet Cong were with the Sihanouk forces and Lon Nol was with the Americans. Lon Nol asked the Americans to bomb places in Cambodia. I was angry with those who encouraged the bombing and those Americans. They mistakenly hit houses, cows, and chickens. End of quote. So my question to you, Mr. So Saroon, is at the time, during the American bombings, did you hear that Lon Nol had made the request to bomb Mondulkiri in the way that the Americans did?
But
Response. No, I didn't. I only saw the bombers, the helicopters dropping bombs in Mondulkiri. And these bombs were dropped days and nights. People had to take refuge in forests. And in the thick forest, people could not afford to take refuge in those forests, although they thought they would give them protection. But the thicker the forests were, the more bombings would be dropped. And at night, whenever there was any place there were light, then the bombs would be targeted on those locations immediately.
Did you hear people talk at the time as to the possible reasons for the Americans to bomb Cambodia?
but at least
Response. No, I did not. I only saw the bombs being dropped.
Thank you, Mr. Saroon. I will move on to a next topic. And that topic is a meeting that you had in Phnom Penh about 10 days after the liberation of Phnom Penh in April 1975. Do you remember answering questions with regard to this meeting earlier this week and last week?
but ដោយខ្ញុំបាន
Response. As I stated before the co-investigating judges, I think the statement is clear, and I have already confirmed this to the prosecutors as well.
Yes, Mr. Saroon, that's exactly what I want to talk about. Do you remember this meeting that took place about 10 days after the liberation of Phnom Penh in 1975?
បាទ
Response: Yes, I do still remember. After the liberation of 1975, the meeting was convened and I attended it.
Do you remember, Mr. Saroon, who the speakers were at that meeting?
បាទគឺប៉ុលពត
Response: It was Pol Pot.
And was there any other speaker than Pol Pot, as far as you can remember?
បាទតាមខ្ញុំ
Response: So far as I remember, there was no other person other than Pol Pot himself.
Last week, when you were questioned by the OCP on this meeting, you said the following, and I would like to quote from the transcripts. It can be found on page 32 of the draft transcript in the English version and page 27 in the Khmer version of the transcript, and this is on day 70 of trial. And I will quote what you said during that session. The prosecution asked you, and I quote, "Can you tell us who the speakers were at this meeting?" And your answer is, "I saw Pol Pot, who was the presenter at the time." The prosecution then asked, "Who, in addition to Pol Pot, made presentations at this meeting?" And your answer was, "I did not see other presenters. I only saw just him." Do you confirm the truthfulness of this statement?
បាទ
Response: Yes, I do.
Thank you, Mr. Sasaroon. Then I would like to ask some questions about another meeting you had in Phnom Penh. And this meeting took place a few months after Lang's death. And you have testified about this meeting before the co-investigating judges, and to save time, with permission of the President, I will just read out from his statement before the co-investigating judges. It's document E3/367, English ERN 00278696, and Khmer ERN 00251439. Do you have permission to simply read from the document, Mr. President?
You may proceed.
In the document, in that statement, Mr. Sasaroon, you state that about 2 or 3 months after the death of Lang and Kampoon, I received a telegram from Pol Pot calling the cadres to a meeting. In its content, 6 cadres, including Ta Vieng, Ta Lork, Ta Kin, Ta Lang, Ta Sophia, and myself, were called to go to a meeting in Phnom Penh. End of quote. Do you remember going to that meeting in Phnom Penh, Mr. Sasaroon?
បាទ
Yes, I do. I was called to attend the meeting.
Do you recall, Mr. Sasaroon, who was present at that meeting?
បាទ
There were many people. They were from all provinces, from all divisions. That was in 1978. It was a Congress meeting.
And to be sure that we are speaking about the same meeting, is that the meeting that took place a few months after the death of Lang and Kampung?
But man,
Yes, it is, as I already answered before the investigating judges.
Do you remember which leaders attended that conference?
but
I knew that they were the leaders because they were called on to the stage.
Do you remember the names of any of the leaders that were present at that meeting?
but
I knew them because they were called on.
And do you now remember the names of the leaders that were present?
but
I knew their names through the leaders as well.
Do you now today remember the names of those leaders, Mr. Sasarun?
Mien Pol Pot,
They were Pol Pot, Mr. Nuon Chea, Mr. Ieng Seri. Those were people who were called on to the stage.
I think that there may be a slight confusion as to which meeting we are talking about. So I may revisit this issue a little bit later, but I thank you for your answers on this topic for now. Another topic I would like to address is the prosecution and the civil parties have spoken about the telegrams that were sent between you and the center in Phnom Penh. Do you recall answering questions about that in the past week?
but look,
I already told that to the co-prosecutors.
Very well. And do you remember from whom in the center you would receive telegrams?
but ទទួលតាម
I received telegrams from Pol Pot.
In your testimony last week, which was on day 71, and I would like to again quote the transcript, and the transcript is page 20 for the English version and page 17 for the Khmer version. And I would like to quote your responses to a question by the prosecutor. So the prosecutor asks you, when you received responses with instructions, who was it that would send those responses? And your answer is the instruction was given through the telegram. Prosecution asks, do you remember, though, who it was, which persons sent you telegrams, sent you instructions in response to the telegrams that you had sent? And your answer was, that I did not know them. I only knew people who assisted me in the telegram office. Do you today confirm the truthfulness of this statement that you made last week?
But
Yes, I do. That answer is accurate, as I already told the prosecutors.
Thank you. Moving on to a next topic for now. Mr. Sausaroon, the prosecutor asked you whether you are perhaps reluctant to testify against the accused. And you have stated that you are not reluctant to testify against the accused. Mr. Sausaroon, are you perhaps reluctant to testify about your own role during the DK regime?
but ខ្ញុំអត់
No, I am not. I answered to the co-prosecutors on the basis of what I know.
I would like to read from a document. It's the same document that we discussed earlier. It's the DC Chem publication, Khmer Rouge Purges in the Mondulkiri Highlands. It's document number D222/1.19, and it's on ERN 00397-654. And I would like to display this on the screen to ask the witness some questions regarding this document.
The President, International Counsel for Mr. Nguyen Chia. Is document D222/1.19 available in English, Khmer and French?
No, it's not, Mr. President. I trust, however, that that's not a problem, considering that I can read it to the witness and it can be conveniently translated into the other languages. It's a document that we relied upon before, in fact, 20 minutes ago. Prosecution does not object, and it's relevant. It relates directly to the role of Mr. Sao Saroon, and I note that the civil parties also relied on documents that were not translated into all languages. So I hope we can proceed, and that I don't need to resort to summarizing this document. I think it will be a much more pleasant experience if we can just read from this document and ask questions based on this document. That is not controversial in any way, I repeat.
The President, Counsel, you do not seem to answer my question. My question was simply that whether the document is available in Khmer and French. You were not supposed to explain to us. My question again is document D222/1.19 available in either Khmer or French? This is my question again.
I think I can answer that. As far as I know, it's not translated in Khmer or French. We have not found it on the case file, but again, the prosecution has submitted this document for your consideration at an earlier stage. So I do hope I can rely on this document.
The President, that was the special case, but you needed to answer to my question first. You are allowed to extract some short portion of the document so that the portions can be easily translated and can be used as a basis of your questions to this witness.
Thank you, Mr. President, for that explanation. Forgive me if I'm not trusting enough on these matters. I will indeed proceed to shortly or briefly quote from this document. And again, I would like ERN page number 00397-654 to be put on the screen. And
you may proceed.
It starts on page 80, which is, I correct, it's ERN 653 rather than 654. But there, the document starts, and I quote Mr. Sao Saroon. Please pay attention because I'm going to ask you a question on this excerpt. I quote the document. With Horm's death, Saroon, an ethnic Lao, became Secretary of Region 105. The conflict between Kamphoon and Horm and the installation of Saroon as Region Secretary led to the imposition of stricter rules in the region and coincided with the period of the greatest number of deaths. And then, under the heading Flood of Killings, this document states, and I quote, many informants mark the beginning of the most radical changes in Mondulkiri to late 1977 and 1978, when Saroon took power. And the last section I will read to you, Mr. Saroon, is just below that. And it is a quote from a witness at DC Cam, and he stated, "After Saroon became the region secretary, they arrested people every day, 4 or 5 people a day. The chief of the cooperative tried to intimidate the people to work harder by telling Saroon was going to kill the lazy people." End of quote. My question to you, Mr. Saroon, can you confirm what is stated in this document, and that is that your tenure as secretary coincided with the period of the greatest number of deaths?
But
My answer to this is that this matter is not correct. Those who reported this exaggerated the facts. I never saw or knew the killings of the people. I denied this statement.
Mr. Saroon, this excerpt leads me to ask you, were you more active than your predecessor, Lang, in ordering executions of local villagers?
but at the
No, I was not. When I took power, it lasted only for 2 months. I was not a strong man who arrested the people. I reject what was read out just now. It was accusing me incorrectly.
Thank you, Mr. Saroon. A scholar, excuse me, a scholar of the Khmer Rouge regime, Mr. Steve Hedder, has written an article about the role of lower level or mid-level cadres in the DK, during the DK regime. And in this article, he states, and I quote, "In practice, the most important level on both the chain of command and the hierarchy of delegated and discretionary authority appears generally to have been the district." The district, making district party secretaries key figures in responsibility for killings nationwide. My question, Mr. Saroon, is the following. Based on Mr. Hedder's research, he concludes that district secretaries were key figures in responsibility for killings nationwide because they had discretionary authority. You, Mr. Saroon, were a district secretary. Do you agree with this finding by Mr. Steve Hedder?
but
I do not know about what happened throughout the country. I do not agree with that because my district was different from other districts.
Thank you. Mr. Hedder, in that same article, also states that most prisoners were sooner or later executed on the authority of the district itself. Was that your experience in your district? Did most people get executed on the authority of the district itself.
But
My answer to this is that within my district, no one was arrested as prisoner.
Mr. Sausaroon, did you report to the leaders in Phnom Penh about any killings that took place in your district when you were district secretary?
No, I did not. I never reported on any killings or arrests of the people.
Mr. Saroon, did you report to the leaders in Phnom Penh about any killings that took place in your sector when you were leader of the sector?
but
After I came to power in the district, I never reported on killings or arrest of the people.
Thank you. Then I would like to ask excuse me, some other questions related to that, but I am at the mercy of the trial chamber in this endeavor, because I would like to confront the witness with the statements of trial chamber witness 307. The trial chamber witness 307 has given two statements that are relevant to the issues that Mr. Sao Saroon is speaking about. His statements lie within the knowledge of what Mr. Saroon could know, and it would be conducive to ascertaining the truth to confront Mr. Sao Saroon with these statements. The prosecution, we've seen it last week, has used several statements of other witnesses. These witnesses were not going to be called as trial chamber witnesses, but we have seen that such a method of questioning can elicit very useful information. Mr. Sao Saroon can confirm or deny the information that's contained in these statements, but either way, we will be further informed if we use these statements. I will, of course, continue to refer to this witness under his pseudonym, but I do think it would be the most effective way to proceed, because if we have to wait for this witness to appear in court, by then we will never be able to confront Mr. Sao Saroon with what this witness has stated. So I am at your mercy. I think it's highly relevant to confront the witness with these statements, and I wait for your position on this matter.
President, the chamber has been seized with the request of the defense counsel for Mr. Nguyen Chia, who request that the written testimony of TCW 307 be used to question this witness. Does any other party of the proceeding would wish to respond to this?
Mr. President, the court has previously stated a ruling that, pardon me, I'll continue, my translator went out, but I'll continue with my statement. The court has previously ruled that only statements of witnesses who will not testify can be used. The reasoning of that is known to the trial chamber. Our view is that we do not have any objection if the trial chamber feels it's appropriate, and in particular if the passage directly relates to something within the witness's knowledge, and that the witness who will be coming is not identified. If all of those things are satisfied, we would not object to it, but it is at your discretion, as you have previously stated, a ruling related to the use of statements of witnesses who will appear.
Oui, Monsieur le Président.
Mr. President, as far as we are concerned, we have no objections either, given the fact that all parties enjoy the same rights subsequently. That is all I have to say.
The President, the request is appropriate and there is no objection from parties. Counsel for Nguyen Chia is allowed to refer to the content of the statement of TCW 307. However, this witness pseudonym shall be used instead of the real name.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will gladly proceed, but regarding these statements, I have a number of questions, and I'm looking at the clock. I'm happy to pose them now or after the break, as you wish.
The President, Counsel, are you sure that the document you are about to put to the witness is confidential enough that the names of the witness would not be revealed when it is put up on the screen. Can you assure that? Have it been redacted already?
Mr. President, thank you for raising the point. That's actually one of the issues I would like to address. I think it would be better to safeguard the confidentiality if I simply read from the excerpts that I would like the witness to respond to. All the parties have access to this document, so they can all check that I'm doing so in an accurate way, and in that way we don't have to worry about revealing confidential information. That's the way I would propose to proceed.
The President, you may proceed then.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I will not ask to have the statement put up on the screen, but the statement that I'm referring to is D200/4, or also known as E3/57, and English ERN is 00290508, and Khmer ERN is 00287705. And I apologize, I don't have the French ERN. In this statement, Mr. Saroon, witness 307, is asked a question about Sector 105, and I quote the question. And this is a question that's posed by the investigating judges, to be clear. Question: did you know about any killing that took place in your sector? And then partial answer is: during the Tasaroon era, the arrests of whole families were made, but I don't know where those families were taken to be killed. Mr. Saroon, do you remember that during your reign, arrests of entire families were made?
Response: no. No whole family member would ever be arrested. I think the person who stated this must be exaggerating, because we never made any arrest of any villager to be executed.
And then a bit further down on that same document, the same witness is asked the following question: which sectors did they bring the prisoners from? And the answer is the prisoners were brought in from districts within Sector 105. The majority of the prisoners who had been arrested and put in the security office were accused of practicing black magic and incantation, witchcraft. Some soldiers were arrested and put there also. Mr. Saroon, do you remember that during your reign in the sector, that was the reason for the majority of the prisoners to be placed in detention? And I'm referring to practicing black magic and witchcraft.
Response. I think we never arrested people who believed to have been practicing black magic or witchcrafts. I was told to not to do that.
Then I will have one last question on this topic, and it's the same document. Oh no, excuse me. It is document E3/58, ERN 002500088, and Khmer ERN 00239936. And here, witness 307 states the following, and I quote: "Those who were brought for re-education in Phnom Kral Dam Security Office included those who broke disciplines, committed immoral offense, stealing and robbery, and work evasion. In each case, the offender had to prepare a biography. The center never made any order to the K-17 office for any arrest." Is that your experience, Mr. Sausaroon, that the center never made any order to the K-17 office for any arrest?
Response. No, it isn't. No arrest was made. As long as it was made in the official announcement, people would not dare arrest others. The President interrupts. Thank you, Counsel. Since it is now appropriate time for adjournment, the Chamber will adjourn until 3 o'clock. Court officer is now instructed to ensure that duty counsel for the witness and witness be taken care of during the break.